The first thing I felt when I opened my eyes was a hand wrapped tightly around mine. It was warm, gentle, and trembling slightly, as if the person holding it was afraid that if she let go, I might disappear again. I slowly turned my head and saw a woman sitting beside my hospital bed. She was wearing pale blue scrubs, her dark hair pulled neatly into a bun, and tears were shining in her tired eyes. When she realized I was awake, she smiled through those tears and whispered something that made my heart freeze. She said, "You still don't remember me." I stared at her face, searching through a mind that suddenly felt like an empty room. I knew her voice. Somehow, deep inside me, I knew that hand. But I had no idea why. Before we continue, if you believe that kindness can change a life and that sometimes second chances arrive when we least expect them, please like this video, share it with someone who believes in second chances, leave a comment, and subscribe to Dad's Second Chance. Your support helps us bring more emotional stories like this to you. My name was Daniel Carter, and I was 38 years old. I had spent most of my adult life working hard, raising my 7-year-old daughter, Emma, and trying to keep moving after losing my wife 3 years earlier. Emma was the center of everything I did. Every morning, I packed her lunch, fixed her hair when she complained about it, and drove her to school before heading to work. I had become the kind of father who measured his days by his daughter's smiles. But one rainy evening, everything changed. I was driving home after picking Emma up from school when another car lost control at an intersection. I remember headlights rushing toward me. I remember Emma screaming my name. And then there was nothing. When I woke up, the ceiling above me was white and painfully bright. Machines beeped beside my bed, and my entire body felt heavy. My throat was dry, my head throbbed, and for several seconds I didn't know where I was. A doctor explained that I had suffered a serious head injury and had been unconscious for several days. Emma had survived with minor injuries, but she was staying with my sister while I recovered. The doctors warned me that memory problems were common after an injury like mine. They couldn't tell me exactly what I would remember or when it would return. Then there was the nurse. Her name was Sarah Bennett. She was assigned to my room during the night shift. She checked my medication, adjusted my pillow, and made sure I drank enough water. She never rushed away like the other nurses sometimes had to. There was something familiar about her, but every time I tried to understand why, my mind gave me nothing. She knew small things about me that I hadn't told her. She knew I hated hospital coffee. She knew Emma liked strawberry milk. She knew that I always tapped my fingers against the bed rail whenever I was nervous. Most strangely, she knew that I used to hum an old song whenever I was trying to make Emma laugh. I asked her how she knew so much about me, but she only smiled and said that sometimes people remember more about us than we remember about ourselves. Over the next few days, Sarah became the calmest part of my recovery. When nightmares woke me, she sat beside my bed until I stopped shaking. When physical therapy exhausted me, she encouraged me to try one more step. When I became angry because I couldn't remember important moments of my own life, she never told me to be patient. Instead, she reminded me that losing memories didn't mean losing the person I had always been. One afternoon, Emma came to visit. The moment I saw my daughter standing in the doorway, my heart broke. She ran toward me and hugged me carefully, afraid of hurting me. I held her as tightly as I could and apologized because I couldn't remember the birthday party we had celebrated only weeks earlier. Emma started crying, and I felt completely helpless. Sarah stood quietly near the door, wiping away a tear when she thought nobody was watching. That night, I asked Sarah why she cared so much. She looked at me for a long moment before finally revealing the truth. She had known me long before the accident. Not as my nurse. As a stranger who had once been saved by my kindness. Months earlier, before the accident, I had stopped at a small grocery store late one evening. Outside, I had noticed a young woman sitting alone on a bench, crying. She had just received terrible news about her mother's illness and had forgotten her wallet inside the store. She was embarrassed and refused help at first. I had simply bought her groceries and left without asking for anything in return. That woman had been Sarah. Her mother had been battling cancer, and Sarah had been struggling to pay for everything while finishing nursing school. She never forgot the men who helped her that night. But there was more. A few weeks later, Sarah had begun working at the same hospital where my wife had once received treatment. She had seen me in the hallway several times. She recognized me immediately, but I never recognized her. She didn't blame me. She understood that life had moved on. Then my wife had died. Sarah had watched from a distance as I struggled to hold my family together. She wanted to speak to me, but she felt it wasn't her place. Until the accident brought me into her care. When she finished telling me, I stared at her in silence. I still couldn't remember the grocery store. I couldn't remember the bench, the rain, or the moment I had helped her. But something inside me changed. I realized that maybe kindness didn't disappear just because the person who gave it forgot. Weeks passed. My physical strength returned, but my memory came back slowly and unpredictably. I remembered Emma's laugh. I remembered my wife's favorite song. I remembered the tiny apartment where we had lived before buying our house. But I still couldn't remember Sarah. That became the hardest part. One morning, Sarah entered my room carrying a small cardboard box. She placed it on the table beside my bed. Inside were photographs, a grocery receipt, and a folded piece of paper. She told me she had never wanted to force my memory to return. She only wanted me to know the kind of person I had been before the accident. I opened the folded paper. It was a note I had written months earlier. It said that if I ever found myself wondering whether one small act of kindness mattered, I should remember that people carry moments with them long after we forget giving them. I stared at those words until my vision blurred. And suddenly, I remembered. A rainy evening. A woman sitting on a bench. A paper grocery bag. A frightened smile. And two hands meeting for just a moment. I looked up at Sarah. Her eyes were already filled with tears. I finally remembered her. But what happened next surprised even me. I reached for her hand. The same hand I had been holding when I first woke up. I told her that I remembered the woman on the bench, but I also remembered something else. I remembered that she had smiled even while crying, and somehow that smile had stayed with me. Sarah cried then, not because I had remembered everything, but because after all those months, she finally knew that the kindness between two strangers had never truly disappeared. My recovery continued, but life was different afterward. Sarah eventually finished her nursing training and became one of the most compassionate nurses in the hospital. Emma adored her. Slowly, naturally, Sarah became part of our lives, not because she was the nurse who cared for me, and not because I owed her anything, but because sometimes the people who enter our lives through unexpected doors become the ones who help us find our way home. Months later, I stood outside that same grocery store with Emma and Sarah. The bench where Sarah had once cried was still there. I sat down for a moment and looked at Sarah. This time, I remembered everything. I remembered her fear. I remembered her courage. And most importantly, I remembered the lesson her story had taught me: sometimes the smallest kindness we give away becomes someone else's reason to keep going. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs a little hope, and subscribe to Dad's Second Chance. You never know when one small message of kindness might reach someone at exactly the right moment. And before you go, I have one special request: comment, "Kindness is never forgotten," if you believe that even the smallest act of kindness can change someone's life. Because I woke up believing I had forgotten a stranger. But in the end, I discovered something far more beautiful. Some people don't need to be remembered to matter. Sometimes, their kindness remembers them for you.